Hi everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Campbell from Campbell Tyson, so we're really pleased to be able to present this seminar to you today. One of the challenges we as accountants have is getting farmers to think of their farming activities as a business. And we need them to consider things like what is best practice. We need them to benchmark themselves against other farmers. We need them to think about tax planning, succession planning. In fact, it'd be quite nice if farmers had a business plan at all. And a lot of them don't. So I'd like to congratulate all of you for being here today, because you're in that elite group of people who do think of your farming activities as a business and are trying to improve. So well done. Our next guest speaker is Jason Fayers from Franklin Vets. So welcome, Jason.
Over the last probably 30 years or probably longer, there's been a bit of a change in the veterinary profession from a focus of just turning up and treating the animal that's sick on the farm to more of a preventative approach. Vets are trying, where possible, to practice based on evidence and trial work to say that the interventions or the treatments or preventative things we're coming up with have actually got some science behind them to say that they work. Vets and farmers, I think, are asking more and more, okay, that's cool, we know it works, but how much am I going to get out of spending $3 on this or $5 on that? There's really two types of cost when it comes to disease and veterinary spend and that sort of thing for farmers. There's the money you write a cheque for, which is pretty obvious and pretty painful sometimes. The next type of cost is the money you never receive. And that can be in quite a lot of various areas and can be pretty hidden. An example might be lost production from heifers with mastitis. You know, how much you guys probably know that when a heifer gets mastitis, you tend to see light quarters or you might lose a quarter, but how much are you actually losing in milk that you don't receive a cheque for? Or, you know, you probably always notice that it's your best cow that gets the chronic staph infection, the highest yielder in the herd. How much do you end up losing by culling that best cow at the end of the season? Other differences, the money you spend is very easy to quantify. It's written down on a bit of paper by your accountant. You see it in your checkbook, you see it in your bank account, it's pretty obvious. The money you don't receive is much more of an unknown in terms of what could you have produced that season in a good season. You know, we've had a good season now. Could you have produced more if you had less mastitis or you had less lameness or whatever? So the question is, which should you be more worried about? I know which one most farmers are more worried about, but we'll have a look and see. So lost production, it could be in milk. It's pretty obvious for dairy farmers if you're not producing as much milk. It could be things in growth rates of calves that you're trying to grow or heifers you're trying to grow. It can be a short-term loss in production with a disease that puts a cow off colour for a few weeks and then she bounces back. A lot of them are actually things that will knock a cow and reduce her lactation peak and reduce her production for the rest of the season. So they can be long-term and they can go on past the first season. They can go on for the rest of that cow's lifetime. Pretty good example there would be a heifer that calves late in her first year. Would very often be a late calf of the second year, and it's very difficult to get a heifer or a cow to calve at less than a 365-day interval. So if you've got a heifer that calves 8 weeks into the season in her first year, she's going to have 8 weeks less milk production for the rest of her lifetime. So it's a lot of money. Involuntary culling is a very difficult one to quantify. Obviously it slows the rate of genetic gain in your herd. It slows your ability to get rid of the bad cows and keep the good cows. For this section here, the intramammary antibiotics is the cost there. So when you come into the vet clinic and you're spending money on tubes, and you go away and you look at your bill and you think, damn, mastitis is costing me a lot of money, you're right, it is, because you've got all of that as well that you haven't seen. So we've got milk production losses, increased chance of being culled, and then milk discard, which may or may not be an issue if you're feeding calves. So it gives you an idea that, you know, the vet spend, if you like, is a pretty small amount of what you're losing. As part of Dairy NZ's upgrade of what's being called Smart SAM, which is a whole heap of other resources that's being put around the SAM plan, a bit like they did with the reproductive thing within calf, in terms of providing a total package for looking at mastitis. The point of this really was to show that it's not just clinical mastitis that costs you money. The National Mastitis Advisory Committee did a heap of work with Dairy NZ a few years ago, and they found that doubling your cell count from, say, 150 to 300 average, that you were losing 2 or 3% production out of the herd for that in terms of damaged udder tissue. So they've got a very nice cost calculator where you can do some scenario planning type stuff or compare yourself with targets or whatever, where We've actually got this on InfoVet, where it will put your figures directly from your cell count graphs and your mastitis incidence, and it will populate the spreadsheet here. You know, often cell count, a lot of farmers say, what do I care about cell count? You know, as long as I'm under 400,000, it's not a problem, or as long as I'm not having to cull too many cows, it's not a major issue to me. But there are production losses, and it may only be 2 or 3%, but 2 or 3% is quite a bit of your profit that's going down the drain. A lot of it's around decision making, in terms of giving you guys information to make decisions as to what you're going to change on farm, whether you're going to invest in using dry cow therapy, or whether you're going to spend more on grazing your heifers because you think you're going to get a return on it. Basically, the cost of heifer mastitis is $240 for the first season, and then on average she's going to have 2% production, lower production for the following season as a cow, for the following future seasons. So I haven't factored that in. If you say teat seal's approximately $24 a cow, 100 heifers is going to cost you $2,400 to do. What's the break even? 2,400 divided by $240 a case. If we get more than 10 cases in 100 cows, i.e. greater than 10% heifer mastitis, that's your break even to say, should I be teat sealing or should I not be teat sealing? So, you know, that's an example of a break even analysis type thing. Prevention's better than cure. I think everyone's heard that and know that. Your preventative spend generally yields the highest return. Once we've got disease, there's a whole heap of losses that are already happening and we can't stop them. If you spend money on preventative measures, or let's say preventative management changes, like making sure you're getting cows into the right condition, you're preventing the losses and you're going to get a better return on what you're doing. Benchmarking animal health spending and the costs that you see up front and you write a check for is very easy. I think what we've probably got to work harder on is benchmarking disease as well, and also understanding that animal health spending on one farm may be inherently higher than it is on another farm, because you've got, say, farm setup things which are going to affect your levels of disease. So you might have a standoff pad, a bark standoff pad on one farm and not on another, and you're going to have to spend more on preventing disease in that high challenge type environment than you are on another farm. So there are inherent differences between farms that mean whilst benchmarking of health spending is interesting and useful, you've got to understand that it's only half the story, basically.